Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Lieutenant Stephen Rogers, your host here at Tonight in America. Ladies and gentlemen, I first want to share with you a lot of thanks, by the way. We had released our new book, our new publication last night called 22 plus 1 Detours. It's right there. And I'll tell you why I'm smiling. We found a way, in the military, you learn to be innovative. We found a way that those of you who live overseas can get these publications that we have out in book form without costing the tremendous fee that is put upon your shoulders from postage companies. Here at the United States Post Office, for example, people from Canada and Europe had wanted the book called Cops and God. Well, when they found out that the book was like $11.95, but the postage was double or triple the cost of the book, it was just economically impossible for people to get the book. So we're doing a few things. Number one, 22 plus 1 Detours is now being sold in manuscript format. We haven't put it in soft cover or hardcover yet, but we're going to try something new here. So anyone who wants that book, listen to this. It's not going to be $11.95. There's going to be no charge for postage because there's no postage. We're actually going to send it to you in a PDF manuscript format. So you'll be able to have the book, and the cost is only $7. That's it, $7. We send it to you in a PDF format, and it's yours to print, to do what you want with it. So now what happened is, I believe it was last night that we actually posted it, and boy, did we get orders. We got a lot of orders from Europe. So that's good news. And so if you'd like to have a copy of the book, you can visit www.rogersamerica.com. That's rogersamerica.com. Now, the reason why, that's an LLC, by the way. I want you to know that. The reason why we're not distributing it through Campaign for America, unfortunately, we have to pay taxes on the things that we sell. So what we decided to do was sell it through the LLC. I don't want Campaign for America ever to be touched only for those things that Campaign for America does. So here's what we're doing. So we're taking some of the proceeds from that book, and we're going to donate it to Campaign for America. So those are the things we're doing to help finance Campaign for America, and at the same time buy the equipment that we need and the tools we need to continue our broadcast. So if you go to www.rogersamerica.com, it should take you right to the bookstore. You click the bookstore button and bingo. There you go. Now, another thing I wish to explain, because I was confused about it. You could buy it via PayPal and some other platforms like that, but you could also purchase the book via credit card. What you have to do is fill out where it says PayPal or. You fill out the or part, and then when you go to the checkout, the credit card icons come up. Why that is, I don't know, but that's the way that these things were set up. But needless to say, the book 22 plus 1 Detours is extraordinary, folks. It's extraordinary because it deals with how God detoured the lives of several people, including yours truly, including me, and what God did in our lives that changed the lives of many people, certainly impacted my life. So if you want a true stories about your faith and a closeness with God like you never had before, I think you're going to want to look at 22 plus 1 Detours. So people ask the question, well, we understand the 22 part of the title, but what's that plus 1 all about? Well, you read the book, you'll find out what plus 1 is all about. So there you go, 22 plus 1 Detours in manuscript format, all yours. Just go to rogersamerica.com and we'll be able to get that book to you. So now I have a very, very special guest on tonight. His name is Arnold Sherman. Now, Arnold Sherman is a fellow who I worked with for many, many years. He worked for the New Jersey Division of Criminal Justice, and he actually authored with another guy named Marty Green. I forget Marty's last name, so Arnold will be able to tell us. Arnold, I see you smile. I'll put you on right now. I see, Arnold, I got to tell you, we've agreed that age is catching up with us.
Oh, yeah. I forgot my name. Marty Greenberg. Marty
Greenberg. There you go. So Marty Greenberg and Arnold had actually authored the New Jersey state anti-bias laws and the anti-discrimination laws. And Arnold, that was a time when anti-Semitism was rising all over the country. And you and I had the opportunity to work together in Israel, didn't we?
We sure did. We sure did.
So now, Arnold, I want to talk to you about some of the issues that are happening around the United States and some in Canada, because I know you've been watching. And by the way, folks, Arnold happens to be on the board of directors of Campaign for America. He's our national political and public policy advisor, closely watching what's been going on in Canada and behind the scenes, talking to a lot of people and getting the word out. So, Arnold, thanks for joining us tonight.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Arnold, if you could speak a little louder or the volume a little louder, that'd be fine.
Okay.
Okay, there you go. Thanks. So one thing I'd like to talk about, Arnold, is what is on the minds of a heck of a lot of people, and that is the FBI's raid on Trump's property in your state. Now, you and I have worked with the FBI our whole life. This is not the FBI you and I knew. So could you share with our audience your perspective from all your experience with search warrants, judges, and the FBI? They've heard my perspective. Let's hear yours.
Well, my perspective is simply this. First of all, we don't know all the facts, but the way they conducted that, and I'll call it a raid, although the mainstream media wants to call it execution of a search warrant, the way they raided that facility when no one was there. They knew that Donald Trump was up in New Jersey at the time. The club was closed, but they came with guns a-blazing, quote unquote, the type of actions that are usually reserved for a pre-dawn raid on narcotics rings. In my day, when we worked with the FBI, they were honest, they were professional, they were ethical, and they were apolitical. Well, that no longer holds true for the FBI of today. First of all, no one was in the facility, as I said. There was no reason to demonstrate that kind of behavior in executing a search warrant, pre-dawn search warrant in Donald Trump's residence. When we did raids, except for maybe a narcotics raid pre-dawn, all we carried were 38 revolvers and later on 9mm pistols. We did not need the kind of firepower or use the kind of firepower they used, especially when no one was there. So it's questionable as to why that occurred. One other thing that's very important, the FBI sat on that warrant for like 3 days. It was signed 3 days before they executed it. So if it was of such urgency and national security issues were involved here, why did they wait 3 days to execute the warrant? In fact, the archives indicated this possibility that the former president had this documentation in his house months before they executed the warrant. So why the wait if it was such an emergency?
You know, Arnold, there's a lot of whys. For example, I was asked by the news media this week, why do you think Attorney General Garland took a long time to come out and be transparent and explain to the public what went on? And my view was, and I'm going to ask you to weigh in on this, that they knew things went a little crazy and they were trying to find a way out. They were trying to find a way to cover their rear ends.
Exactly. It's exactly what happened. He was in hiding for 3 days. The president was in hiding. He refused to answer questions about it. In fact, indicated he didn't even know that the warrant was being executed, which is really hard to believe.
As a retired law enforcement officer, another question: why would any law enforcement officer ask the people who own the property, or in this case, the lawyers and staff that were there, to shut any videos that are rolling and to stay out of the room? I don't get that, because when we conducted search warrants, I explained to people, Arnold, that indeed, if anybody wanted to be in the room, it would be limited, but they would be pretty much under guard, because you never know who's in the room and what type of actions they may take. But having people, one or two lawyers in the room and maybe videos, I saw no problem with that. Would you weigh in on that? You may have a different view on it.
No, we always allowed defense attorneys to view executions of search warrants. Why they wanted the videos turned off, that's subject to speculation, but not normal. It's not normal, and it makes you wonder.
First time it ever happened, at least in my lifetime, that the FBI ever conducted a raid like this, or any law enforcement agency. And Arnold, the ultimate question is: has the FBI, in your view, been politicized, weaponized, and compromised?
Absolutely. The FBI has been all the above. They are being used as a democratic, socialist, communist secret police, or Gestapo, if you will. They are playing favorites as far as political operatives and political people are involved. They treat the Democrats, a la Hillary Clinton, a la Hunter Biden, differently than they treat Donald Trump and his associates, Roger Stone, Giuliani. All the rest of them are under attack because they're Republicans.
Now, you and I have had discussions regarding the anger of the American people. And you and I have talked about how, at this time, we also need to get the message out that the field agents, the guys and gals on the streets that are working hard to protect this country, are not responsible for this. We're talking about the leadership. We're talking about the director of the FBI and that entire team up there, who, by the way, Arnold, I recommended a year ago, or when Donald Trump took office, to clean the whole place out, just to get rid of everybody. After what they did with regard to the Russian hoax, the investigation, and why he didn't do that, well, I don't know. But we want to make it clear, and again, I'm asking you to weigh in on this, Arnold. It's like the street cops that we work with. They're not responsible for the rules and policies of the leadership. And we just want to make it clear that these men and women on the street continue to do their work. And I've heard from some of them. And by the way, I got breaking news a little earlier that apparently 14, and we're going to get this confirmed, but 14 right now, FBI agents have come forward under the whistleblower statute. And it seems like they got a lot to say about what is happening in the FBI, Arnold.
Yes, I've seen that. You're 100% correct. The men and women on the ground, the field agents are wonderful, always have been. It's the politicization of the upper echelon, starting with James Comey. We saw what happened with James Comey. It was totally political and went after any Republican he could because they were Republicans.
Now, I tweeted this out earlier in the week, Arnold. I know you retweeted it, and thank you for doing this. And folks, for those of you who live here in the United States, thousands, tuning in, it's imperative. This is what I wrote, and I'm going to ask Arnold to share this with you. It's imperative all of us who are political leaders and media influencers condemn calls for civil war, armed rebellion, and violence against any government and law enforcement personnel. Like many of you, I am unhappy with what's taking place, but violence is not the solution. Folks, I'm a little dismayed, and Arnold, I'm a little dismayed that more political leaders, Democrat or Republican, are not standing up saying, look it, we ain't going to go down that road. It's no good. Civil war, a revolution, an armed revolution, armed rebellion is not good. Innocent people get killed. I mean it. Innocent people get killed. And keep in mind, folks, that if somebody decides that they want to launch a revolution or armed rebellion by maybe throwing a bomb somewhere, your wife, your kids, your husband, your relatives could be in that place. So we're trying our best to lower the temperature. And Arnold, I don't know if you've heard it, but I haven't heard many politicians come out and say, hey, look, we're going to join the effort and voice opposition and condemnation to this type of behavior. We have a mechanism, and it's called the Constitution. It's called voting. It's called moving forward and doing what's right within the framework of the law. And I've got to tell you, and I've been frank with a lot of our fellow Americans, look what the Canadians have done. Peaceful and very peaceful, by the way. We're going to talk a little bit about that later. Making significant change in their government. There's no armed rebellion there. But this idea of moving down that road, Arnold, kind of dangerous, don't you think?
Very dangerous. We have to, as Republicans and patriots, we have to live to a higher standard. We can't resort to this type of tactics that the evil, hateful left resorts to.
Now, one example of winning without going as far as some people want us to go. This was breaking news earlier, Arnold. You may not know about this. Illinois healthcare workers who filed a lawsuit against their employees who early required a vaccine mandate to keep their jobs. People were fired because they actually applied for religious exemptions and I believe other exemptions not to get the vaccine. They were fired. They lost their jobs, their livelihoods. Well, they took their employees to court. And these individuals who filed a lawsuit against their company were awarded a $10 million settlement after arguing the rule that violated Title VII of the United States Code. So there it is, Arnold. They won, which means now precedent has been set. And any of you out there who have lost your jobs here in the United States, point to that law. Look at what's happened in that court case. When you get a lawyer, tell them what's happened and sue the living daylights out of your employee. I mean, sue them. And if you could get punitive damages against them personally, then do that. They need to pay the price for violating what I believe to be individual rights. And Arnold, that's the peaceful way to go, within the framework of the law and within the courts.
Absolutely. Absolutely correct. In that vein, Steve, I think I spoke to you about a teacher down here in Florida who, because he refused to wear a mask into his classroom, was arrested and fired from his job for not wearing a mask.
Now, I know your governor, Ron DeSantis, has taken strong opposition against acts like that. I'm sure somehow he and his attorney general will get involved. But in Florida, things are quite different than around the country. And you have a governor there who's really stood on the Constitution and's won every step of the way.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, Arnold, we talked a minute ago about the abuse of power of the FBI here. Let's switch to Canada a minute. You're going to be one of the first law enforcement officers that I have on the air, and I'm thankful that you're here and on our board, and we'll have a few others from around the country as we move forward. But you've examined a lot of what we're going to be putting out, a lot of what we're going to be including in our Project Maple Leaf's executive summaries very, very soon, which are going to go to the United States Congress and the Canadian Parliament. So let's start with this. Let's start with what, and you and I are pro-cop. I know you are. We fought our whole life for the rights of cops. But when cops are wrong, we came out and said, you're wrong. So let's talk about this. Again, your perspective as a law enforcement officer. Let's look at, and I know you viewed it over and over and over again, the Freedom Convoy and the day the horses came in. And truly, in my view, those cops on those horses went much too far where a woman was trampled. Let's talk about that.
Absolutely. Again, overstepping their bounds, violating their oaths, being unethical, and trampling down on people, innocent people who were peacefully demonstrating, a show of force that was totally unnecessary, a behavior that was totally unnecessary. And those police officers who did that must be held accountable.
Arnold, we also viewed the actions of police officers, and this was really terrible. I mean, I know a lot of the Canadians know this, a lot of Americans don't know this, but we're going to be publicizing this after our executive summaries are completed. We want you to look at the videos, especially those here in America, where police officers were smashing windows of parked trucks. This is the livelihood of these Canadian truckers, of these people. No reason, smashing their windows. We have videos of law enforcement personnel smashing and destroying tractors and farming equipment. And I understand they were parked nowhere near the protest. Now, this is truly, I mean, an incredible violation of civil rights. And in this country, that wouldn't be tolerated. I mean, we tolerate a lot of things, but I've seen a lot of things go on in our nation with regard to excessive force, but the wanton destruction of property by men and women in the uniform, and as you said, who took an oath to protect and to serve the people, was shocking. When I showed that to police personnel, law enforcement practitioners here in leadership positions, when I showed them the video, Arnold, they were stunned, absolutely stunned.
Yeah, they have to be held accountable. And I believe they were also emptying the gas tanks of those trucks, so those truckers couldn't go anywhere. And if I'm not mistaken, didn't one police officer shoot a round into the windshield of a car or threaten to?
Yeah, I believe there was a threat to that. That was a stunning also. Now here, and I've got the video of that. In fact, I believe we had the trucker on our broadcast who his testimony is going to weigh heavily on the abuse there. So the trucker is asked to remove his truck. He can't because they got it blocked in the back. He's having a conversation with an officer through his window, and another officer, Arnold, saw with my own eyes, apparently drew his weapon and pointed it towards the windshield. I mean, the guy's unarmed. He's trying to comply with the officer's orders, and you got this clown decides to point his gun at this guy. And thank God the trigger didn't go off and kill this man. But here's my point. Not only did the actions of the Canadian police really damage their reputation, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, I know you and I, we revered them. We remember Sergeant Preston when we were kids?
Yukon.
Yeah. Yukon, right? For those of you who are not as old as Arnold is,
nobody's as old as I am.
We used to watch Sergeant Preston of the Yukon, right? And it was a Royal Canadian Mounted Police officer on his horse, beautiful. All us kids, we loved it. We really revered that agency. And like the FBI, who abused their power, you got the Royal Canadian Mounted Police compromised a lot of the things that they did in their actions. And so my point is this: not only did the Canadian law enforcement personnel damage their reputation and did it badly, so did they damage their reputation, not only the eyes of their countrymen and women, but people all over the world, just like what the FBI did. The reaction that the Canadian government and now the United States government is getting worldwide with regard to the abuse of power of the police is astounding. You know, more astounding, Arnold, this is interesting, than what Black Lives Matter and all these anti-government protesters did, even burning police precincts down. There was a lot of reaction to that. And I guess the reaction is more about the FBI and law enforcement personnel in Canada, because you wouldn't expect them to do that. You expect the anti-government people to do that, but not those who are called to protect and to serve.
Exactly. Well, like in America, the police have become a private secret service arm of the controlling government.
Well, in November, we're going to change that, aren't we? In November, that's going to be changed big time. All right, let's talk about this. We put a call out to pastors around the United States today, and we made it very clear. It's posted, folks. We put a call out to U.S. pastors to contact us. We're going to set up a private invitation-only meeting with these pastors and church leaders, and we're going to have some pastors from Canada in on this, what we call a national security briefing. Why do we call it that? We call it a national security briefing because we believe that the actions of the government of Canada in jailing church pastors and leaders and persecuting, in our view, Christians and Jews, our pastors in America need to know what's going on and what is coming. Yes, and what is coming if we don't help the Canadians at this hour. And I did receive, Arnold, a number of emails from pastors across the country. As you said, as we know, Arnold and his team are going to vet them to make sure they are who they say they are. But Arnold, you had, without mentioning names, you did have a conversation with some pastors, didn't you?
I sure did. And they are very anxious to get involved in the project. They are very, very anxious to join and speak up and get connected with the Canadian pastors.
And we're doing this, folks, because we found that a lot of pastors, as well as politicians, have no idea what's going on in Canada. And the fact of the matter is that in the 1700s, I had explained to some pastors, it was pastors who led the charge against Great Britain and led the charge with regard to the Revolutionary War. And we made it clear that, those pastors and the pastors we're calling upon, we're not asking them to get entangled with politics. We're going to keep politics out of this. We're going to talk about human rights, individual rights, and the fact that the assault the communist assault on religion, the freedom of religion and religious worship is astounding. Arnold, the left and those who are doing this, they're doing it very publicly. They're not hiding it anymore.
The assault on religion. In fact, I think I had mentioned it to you earlier that Christians who have the rosary beads are now being considered extremist people who have rosary beads.
Now, Arnold, you're Jewish,
Yes.
and we've talked about anti-Semitism, and we've talked about with Jexit, by the way, who's based in Florida, the importance of Jews and Christians coming together, working together for the cause of freedom and liberty. And so you see that happening now. I remember you explained to me, boy, it's astounding how Christians and Jews found this common ground for freedom and liberty, and we're putting all of our resources together, obviously to fight for the good fight of faith here in America, but also helping our Canadian friends.
Exactly.
Now, how about this? How about I tweeted this out? Representative Eric Swalwell, remember the name?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Eric Swalwell. He warned those who support Trump, meaning me, you, and other American patriots, have one last opportunity to get off the Trump train before it gets ugly. Otherwise, they'd find themselves in the wreckage. So I tweeted out that the only wreckage that is going to wreck, or the only train that is going to wreck, is the one Swalwell is on, along with his CCP friends. Now, Arnold, this is the guy. This is the United States congressman that was found, what I hear, all right, literally in bed with a Chinese Communist Party member, a woman. So here's a guy, folks, and I'm mentioning this because we want to prove the hypocrisy of what's going on here in the United States, and the American people need to know this. So here's a guy who's telling Arnold, me, and others who support freedom and liberty that it's best that we get off the Trump train because it's going to get ugly. Well, what does he mean by getting ugly? So here's a guy that was in bed politically and from what we're being told, literally with a Chinese Communist Party member, a woman.
And will not be prosecuted.
It will not be prosecuted.
And will not be prosecuted.
And the response of many people, Arnold, was what? What secrets did he give her?
Exactly.
A lot of pillow talk. I'd like to have that pillow and find out what was going on. So now let's talk about Iran. All right. Now, so Iran, they have this bounty out on Salman Rushdie. I think it was $3 million or $1 million for anyone who kills him. So this killer, all right, or alleged killer, decides that he's going to stab Mr. Rushdie, and now he's locked up. Okay. On top of that, Iran decides to put bounties out on U.S. leaders. I think they were responsible for at least planning an assassination attempt against 2 American leaders. They're responsible for the IEDs that killed American troops in the Iraq War. So this is just a rogue state that is controlled by a bunch of thugs. But I'm going to ask you the question, because you are of Jewish descent. You are a tremendous supporter right on the front lines of Israel. You've spoken to people you know and love and respect, and perhaps some family members in Israel. Why is the United States going down a road of trying to sit at a table with a bunch of thugs like these thugs in Iran, who, by the way, I understand is responsible for some of the rocket attacks in Israel?
Well, I am going to go out on a limb by saying that the Democrat Party, the Democrat Socialist Communist Party, is anti-Semitic, based on the wing of members of Congress that they have. They are anti-Semitic. Israel is not a priority to the Democrats of today, and it's scary. It's very scary that we have to face that.
Now, I understand there are some schools in Florida, and there are some around the country. I was stunned to see this with my own eyes, that are actually subtly advancing the cause of Nazism. I mean, there are people walking around in schools with swastikas on an armband. There was one garden in a school, I think it was in Virginia, at least appeared to be a garden that was in the shape of bushes in the shape of a swastika. Arnold, there's something very, very wrong here when school districts do not stand up and say, hey, look, enough is enough. And I got to tell you, you being one of the people in this country who led the fight against anti-Semitism, who led the fight against discrimination, it's got to break your heart to see what's going on here, all as a result of the Democrat Communist Party.
All as a result of the Democrat Communist Party, Socialist Democrat Party. Critical race theory comes into play here. It's just unbelievable what is going on in our schools, from kindergarten all the way up through college. The anti-Semitism, the hatred that is being taught is just unfathomable.
Now, with regard to the woke agenda, parents have been in touch with me regarding notices that they have received from some colleges, advising the parents that their daughters may be sharing a bedroom in dormitories with a strange man. They may be subject to going into restrooms with men who say they're women. And then the colleges went so far as saying, look, at least some of them, if somebody identifies themselves as a woman, then they will be considered a woman. Now, there have been incidents around the country where in prisons, people who have been arrested are men, but they say they're women, and then there have been rapes. Everything is upside down, Arnold.
Everything is upside down. In fact, I think in New Jersey, one of the police departments policy went out that if they make an arrest of a male who was born a male and he identifies as a female, they have to treat that arrestee as a female. In other words, let that guy go to the ladies' room and have a woman officer search him or her or whatever it is. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy what's going on.
Well, there was a woman who was talking to me, by the way, and tried to make it clear to me that in our conversation, her pronoun is she or her, etc. I told her, look, I'm going to be very clear with you. Your pronoun is what I say it is. Whether you like to be called Miss, Mrs., or whatever, I'm not going to call you she or he. So if you don't want to converse with me, that's your problem, not mine. I don't have a problem. I do not have a problem. So it's your problem, not my problem. And I think what we need to do is to stand up and make it clear that we're not going to bend 1 minute, Arnold, 1 minute to this woke agenda. It's tragic because now we got young kids in elementary schools and in middle schools and high schools being subjected to this. By the way, only in public schools. I've encouraged people to send their kids to parochial and private schools that don't have this garbage. And furthermore, Arnold, maybe at some point, Campaign for America, as we move forward, should shape legislation for state legislatures to give people tax relief or tax reductions who send their children to private schools. Because I'll tell you, we pay high taxes for education that our children are not getting.
They're not getting, they're not learning civics, they're not learning history, they're learning wokeism, they're learning gender identification or misidentification. It's not the same country we grew up in. Let me put it that way.
Didn't your governor, Ron DeSantis, actually speak out on that and is just about outlawed CRT and wokeism in the schools? I mean, this guy's got guts, courage. I don't know what's going on in the other 49 states.
Now, he's unbelievable. He's I think the best governor in the country, obviously.
Now listen to this. Some time ago, I mentioned that until CEOs and people who are in very high leadership positions of a lot of these corporations and who have a lot of wealth, until they become victimized by crime, nothing's going to happen. We know that, law enforcement, right? It's always the middle class, the poor people. They're the ones being victimized by crime because the policies of the politicians protect the rich, protect those who have walls around their homes, okay, folks, who have a lot of money for security. Well, I guess I was right, Arnold, because listen to this and let's weigh in on this. In the city of New York, CEOs of major companies met with the mayor, and they are very upset over this, okay? It says the CEOs, New York City, mobilized after a series of high-profile attacks on commuters. Now, on commuters, or how about on certain commuters? In a killing that shocked the city, Michelle Go, a 40-year-old consultant for Doolittle or Fidelity, was pushed in front of an oncoming train in Times Square subway station. So here's a woman who worked for a big company, pushed someone in front of a subway and was killed at a Times Square subway station. In April, a gunman fired 33 rounds at commuters during rush hour. In May, Daniel Enriquez, a Goldman Sachs executive, was shot dead by a fellow passenger. Why did it take? Why did it take people who work for these companies to be killed? There were dozens of people, middle-income people who worked for themselves, small business owners. Why did it take? And these people who were killed were probably not rich. They worked for these companies, but they work for the companies that are now being affected by this. Why, Arnold? And here's the key: because people no longer want to work with any company or corporation in the city of New York. They're losing employees, which means they're losing money. Arnold, they can care less, in my view, about the lives of these people. They care about their money. They don't care about the red, the color red, the blood red that flows from the victims' hearts and veins. They care about the color green that may be flowing out of their corporate accounts.
And that is one of the reasons that Florida has a huge influx of New Yorkers coming to this state to get away from that crime-ridden city.
Goldman Sachs CEO David Solomon is sensitive to the fears about crime. Well, David Solomon, where were you before your company was affected by these killings, by these murders, by these slaughters, by these muggings? Where were you, David? So David now comes out, very sensitive to the fears about crime. We have to have a safe environment for people, he told NPR in a recent interview. I think public safety is just paramount for the vitality of cities. And the vitality of cities is paramount for economic activity in our country. There it is, Arnold.
There it is. There it is.
You see folks out of their own mouths. They can't stay away from the idea that they're more concerned about the money that's flowing in and out of their coffers. At least that's my view. David, whether you and your corporate people get upset, I don't care. The fact of the matter is we're here to represent the hardworking people of this country who slave drive at low wages for you for a long time. If you really cared about your people, maybe you would get out of the city and you give them a safe environment. And speaking about New York City, Arnold, you've worked here in Essex County, New Jersey for many years. Remember the times we used to be able to take a subway? We went to the city. We went to shows. Now, coming from you, a law enforcement officer who's been in touch with New York City cops, how's the morale of the New York City Police Department and cops around the country, other than in Florida, because it's good there, I know that. How's it going?
Terrible morale throughout the country, not only in New York, but across the country because of this reimagining the police policy that the government wanted to pursue. The police are afraid to do their jobs. They're afraid to get indicted. They're afraid of going to jail. They're afraid of losing their jobs. The police are totally demoralized, as far as I can see, all across this country. And mentioning Florida, as you said, Governor DeSantis has invited law enforcement officers, policemen from New York in particular, who want to come work in a police friendly environment to move to Florida, and he will give them bonuses and pay raises and everything else to get them to incentivize them to come down here.
You know, this guy Solomon, I didn't read this before. He also said that he raised his children in New York City years ago, and it was extraordinarily safe under Rudy Giuliani, under Republican mayors. Then he goes on to say the city is certainly less safe, talking about the present time. I would say, just quoting him, I would say it's a little grittier and a little dirtier. Where in the world has this guy been? A little dirtier, a little grittier? The place is like a garbage dump, and it's littered with criminals, for goodness sakes. So we bring this out, folks, to get a clear understanding of where we are today, but there is hope. Right, Arnold? We've talked about this, and this is what we like to do on Campaign for America. Every storm that we are facing in the United States of America and in Canada, every storm we're going to weather. Now, I find this interesting. I mentioned this on a major network just this week, that I find a common thread going through the United States and Canada. in my view, and I know, Arnold, we've talked about this, the Chinese Communist Party and other enemies of freedom have targeted America and Canada. Why? Arnold, the reason why is no doubt in my mind, and I'd like you to weigh in on this, because we are the freest, most powerful countries on earth when it comes to individual rights and freedom, especially the freedom of religion, the freedom to worship. The communists go after the belief in God. They go after our religious worship. And like you articulated earlier, to think that there's somebody out there that is saying that a little old lady in her 80s who has prayer beads from the Catholic Church or other Christian denominations could very well be a threat to the United States is shocking. But saying that, we're gonna take that thread, we're gonna reweave it through a fabric called freedom and liberty, and we're gonna win. The Canadian people should be encouraged to see our court cases, right, one after another. We're winning. And Arnold, how about the elections? I mean, we really wiped we wiped out individuals who did not stand for freedom and liberty in our own party. And it looks like we've got a big, exciting time coming up just a few months from now.
Well, hopefully so. We have to, and you've articulated it many times, we have to vote the Democrats out of office. We have to regain the House and the Congress and the presidency in order to resolve these issues. We just have to get rid of those people.
Well, that's about it, Arnold. I want to thank you for joining us. And we have an important meeting of the Project Maple Leaf on Thursday night after our Canadian broadcast. The executive summaries, I know you'll be going over them. So you've told me you've been pretty encouraged in what you've seen.
Absolutely. Very much so.
Very good. All right, Arnold, thanks a lot for joining us, and we'll catch up to you. Stand by, folks. I'll be with you in a second. Thank you, Arnold.
Thank you.
All right, so there you have it from our National Political and Public Policy Director, Arnold Sherman, and a lot of information that we put out there. And I've got to tell you that we are encouraged over what we're seeing in this country. I just saw something here where somebody said that their remarks are being seen by everyone. Yeah, we don't censor anything here, folks. You got to understand that we're not like the left. So if you're saying anything that is not good, you don't want to say that, folks. Okay. So keep in mind that we're very open and transparent here. And we always, look at, we have a lot of great people who are saying a lot of great things, but there are some who, they say things that, they shouldn't be saying, especially when it comes to recommending things that are not proper. But it's there, it's out there. So just be a little prudent on the things that you're saying. So that's it, folks. So this was Tonight in America. And what's encouraging? Well, we are taking the lead on a lot of things. I'm so encouraged over Project Maple Leaf and the work both Canadians and Americans have done with regard to issues like the WEF. We're taking the WEF to task, and the executive summary is being put together by someone that is extraordinarily talented and gifted with regard to research, as well as the other people on this team, both from Canada and the United States. Going to be 5 executive summaries put together that are going to address the WEF specifically, law enforcement, and a lot of the issues we talked about tonight. And we'll talk more about that Thursday night on Tonight in Canada broadcast. So that's what we're going to do, folks. We're going to take care of that. And we still have the call out to pastors all over the United States. Come on, men and women in the clergy, it's time to stand up. Time to stand up and help our brothers and sisters in Canada. And they're your colleagues. They're men and women of the cloth, if you will. They need your support, moral support, and prayerful support. And now they need your voice. So if you are a pastor or church leader, you are invited, or you will be invited to this invite-only national security briefing. It'll be on Zoom. You just let us know who you are. You could look at campaignforamerica.com, go to our website, there's contact information page, and you will be able to, you give us your information, we'll be in touch with you, and you will be able to join us at that meeting. So one more thing right here, folks. Okay, bingo. There it is. It's a $7 22 plus 1 Detours manuscript format. I promised God a long time ago, I know you've heard me say this, that we're never going to forget him. Never. And that anything we could do to use what I call the secular pulpit to get his message out, we're going to do it. What's the saying in the Bible? There's a scripture says, faith come by hearing, hearing by the word of God. And we hear God's word through the real life testimonies of people who have experienced some extraordinary movements of the Holy Spirit. That's what this book is, 22 plus 1 Detours. There it is, www.rogersamerica.com, www.rogersamerica.com. Well, that's it. It's a pleasure joining you folks. Have a great few days, at least until Thursday when we see you again. Thanks for joining us from the United States, Canada, and great countries, free countries around the world. And remember, there's a God above. He loves you. He'll see you. He'll see Canada. He'll see America. He'll see every freedom-loving country around the world through the storm. Thank you, and have a great evening. I'm Lieutenant Stephen Rogers.